Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today. This will be the last one for 2019. And as you can see there, the title of the webinar today is Take Money Offshore for the Right Reasons. But just to give you a quick introduction, some of you might have heard of it, but if you have not heard of the movement called #I'mStaying, where have you been? Many South Africans across racial groups, all racial groups, age groups and religious affiliations are voicing their love for our country and the reasons why they are choosing to stay and face the new struggles and challenges that this country faces. Bottom line, it's just a platform for people to voice the positive things about South Africa. So that's the positive sentiment. On the other side of the coin, obviously as an investor, when it comes to your money, it's always prudent to diversify your investment risk. When I say prudent, it's wise, obviously, to diversify your investment risk. But moving money offshore should not be the result of the reaction to a short-term changes in the local environment. For example, when the rand suddenly weakens, having money or having offshore exposure should be part of your investment philosophy alongside your local share investment. But the main thing about taking your money offshore, it must be driven by your own investment goals. And I'll go into more detail with that in this presentation. But the idea also is to, having offshore exposure is great in the long term for the long-term investor. And this is not a short-term trading webinar, it's more long-term. So here is my little agenda for today. If you guys can hear me still, cool. A lot of guys are still coming on board. Awesome. Okay, cool. Okay, good turnout for today. Obviously, the topic is very interesting for a lot of people. So I'm going to talk about why invest offshore, give you the pros and cons. That is my objective for today's webinar. And then how to gain offshore exposure, what are your options, and then how to use the PSG Wealth offshore trading platform. For those of you that have an existing offshore account and haven't used it yet, and those of you that are thinking about opening up an offshore trading account. Okay, so to get started, why you want to invest offshore? A country's economic conditions are influenced by numerous macroeconomic and obviously microeconomic factors, including monetary and fiscal policy, as well as the state of the global economy, as well as unemployment levels, productivity, exchange rates, inflation, and a lot of other factors. So if you look back a year ago, global markets weren't doing so well, but since then, global equities have rebounded from those the weak finish we saw in 2018, with many markets this year, many stock markets this year hitting all-time new highs. Okay, so monetary policy obviously is the main thing that's been pushing the markets. The reserve banks or the central banks have been printing money, and this has helped lift markets and obviously stimulate demand for riskier assets and regions. But also we've seen things like political risk has reared its head through the net impact on the markets. Obviously that has been offset as such by, as I said, by the stimulus. Here in South Africa, we forget about things like, I think in the offshore there's a lot of uncertainty happening in the markets right now. We've got this trade war between China and US. Obviously that's on a daily basis, those changing narratives is creating volatility. Obviously we're seeing what's happening with those trade talks. Number one, and number two is obviously Brexit. There's also a lot of those of you who are thinking you're investing in the UK. We also got the UK elections coming up. So all these things create a lot of uncertainty. And also what I found interesting, and this came across my desk about 2 days ago, the banks, the Chinese banks, there's 4 banks have collapsed in China since May. So, there's a massive cleanup happening at the moment. But the first bank was OShea Bank. It failed. in May 2019. It was the first bank ever, well, not the first bank ever, but the first bank to fail in more than 20 years in China. And then the second bank where there was this big domino effect happening, the Bank of Qingzhou, that also, and the Hengfeng Bank were bailed out. But there's a lot of fear in China, especially with savers. They want to take the money out of the banks and that. So this fear of this financial meltdown, like we had a few years ago in the US and things like that, that is starting to rear its head in China. And that, remember, China is the second biggest economy in the world after the US. So the biggest fear for the Chinese authorities is run on the banks, where the depositors want to take the money out of the banks. So that's quite interesting. So that's just giving you some context. But let's dig a bit deeper into the South African situation. So first of all, obviously we talk about economic growth. Here in South Africa, we've seen recently our last quarter. This is until the June quarter. After shrinking, let me bring my cursor here. Okay, after shrinking to 3.1%, it's negative 3.1 in the first quarter. We had a sudden swing around to 3.1 positive. So that's like a 200% increase in our GDP rate. So that was quite interesting to see that. But the mining, finance, trade, and government services were the main drivers, with mining the strongest performer. And you see that with local gold mining stocks. Not only gold mining, but also the platinum stocks doing very, very well recently. Three industries, the construction, the agriculture, and the transport sectors, on the other hand, registered a slump in production. GDP growth, by the way, if you want to go Google this information, GDP growth from 1993 to 2019 has averaged 2.71%. So that's looking at the long-term picture. But also, our highest we've ever been is 7.6%. That was the fourth quarter of 1994. So many, many years ago we had that kind of growth. Our record low economic growth for a quarter was negative 6.1. That happened in the first quarter of 2009. That was just after, obviously, the crash of 2008. Okay. So that just gives you some insight regarding the economic growth. And that's one of the big things that you must take in consideration when you're looking at investing. The prospects for growth, and obviously that gets reflected in the stock market and the companies. Whoops, sorry, let me just click over here. Let's look at another little thing that's also interesting to look at. We talk about inflation and interest rates. Last week, Thursday, the 21st of November, the Reserve Bank erred on the side of caution and kept the interest rates unchanged. If you look at this little black line here, this is the repo rate. It's basically unchanged. So the call was a tough one for the Reserve Bank, in the sense that consumer inflation, CPI, that's the red line here, as well as PPI, you see it's in a downward trajectory. So that's the one side. A lot of people were anticipating an interest rate cut would have stimulated the economy, economic growth, and things like that. But as I say, the MPC decided to keep it unchanged because they expect inflation to accelerate in 2020. Okay, to increase to at least 5.1%. The Reserve Bank also does not see any evidence that inflation would, they do not see that inflation will continue to slow down. That's on the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is obviously the impediments to growth is more of a structural nature. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. But what's worrying about this whole scenario about the economy and things like that, we see that now with Moody's decision to downgrade our credit rating outlook from stable to negative. That was one thing that was quite scary. Other thing is obviously, if Moody's does go a bit further, to result in South African bonds being kicked out of indices that investors use as a benchmark for benchmark purposes. The other rating agency, S&P, if they should downgrade us in the coming months, would make it even more difficult for South Africa to return to investment grade. And the length of time it would take to exit that junk status, they say, is between 7 and 8 years. So these are some of the reasons why you want to look at going offshore. So yeah, to give you a very quick, I always say it's perception is reality. This is for a lot of people the perception of what's happening right now in South Africa's political and economic scenario. We all know what's happening with Eskom. Okay, load shedding is not very good for the economy and things like that. Load shedding is the biggest, or Eskom is the biggest threat to the South African economy. It generates more than 9% of our electricity and controls the entire transmission and significant portion of the distribution network. The problem here with Eskom, we're worried about the sustainability, and obviously that's key to the future of the economy. So yes, Eskom. Eskom as well as the SANRAL are our two biggest culprits when it comes to the largest debt exposure. And they're also both, as I say, both on sub-investment grade or junk status right now. If you look at all the other state-owned enterprises, I was quite amazed to see there's more than 700. If you look right down to local government level. But the big ones would be, obviously, we saw recently or last week, SAA, okay, and they haven't got money to pay salaries, and that's a lot of uncertainty around that. We've seen what's happening with SABC, the South African Broadcasting Corporation. We see what's happening with Transnet. So this, they've been in decline for so many years, and it's going to take a while to turn it around. Linked to that, obviously, it's got a lot to do with corruption, a lot to do with state capture. We still have to see some, well, they are starting to see some arrests happening now regarding to that. There's a lot of policy uncertainty. The land expropriation without compensation, that hasn't really been settled. Still a lot of uncertainty around there. There's still this question around the independence of the Reserve Bank. We saw now there's things are starting to happen with regards to visas for minors, and as well as obviously for tourists. But the wheel, as I say, it's starting to move. Our employment rate is now it's recently jumped up to 29.1%. That was in the third quarter. That was marking its highest level since the first quarter of 2003. That's 16 years ago. We've got a problem with lack of skills. We've got labor unrest. We've got service delivery protests happening all the time. And obviously rand weakness. And you'll see in the next slide, when we're talking about rand weakness, I think one of the biggest reasons for that, okay, this is a long-term view going right back to 1992, when the rand was at about 2 rand to the dollar. Yeah, we're hovering around about 16 rand to the dollar. Yeah, at the moment at about 1485, 83 rand. This was a snapshot that took us morning. So a lot of people, when the rand weakens, when it goes up to these levels, yeah, that's when people want to take their money offshore. And that's not the right time to take your money offshore. You want to take your money offshore when it's actually contrarian, when everything is going well, when the rand is strong. That's when you should be taking your money offshore. So when the rand does turn around and get weaker, you take advantage of that. But one of the reasons why we have a scenario, I believe, for the last, this is yesterday, with there were foreign net sellers of our JSE shares, our equities. 4.6 billion were foreign investors selling South African stocks. For the week so far, 939 billion. Okay. Sorry, 939 million. That's for the week so far. For the year to date, 108 billion rand has been sold. And obviously, if you're a foreign investor, you're selling the rands, you have to buy the dollars, hence this trend. Okay. So they're taking the money back to the States, moving out of risk assets, or what they call risk off scenario. So that is just one picture you must take in consideration, why the rand is happening like that. Okay. But also, if you look at the JSE itself, this is the JSE OShea performance, taking your money offshore at the right time. You can see this is a performance again going all the way back to 1996. Okay, how the JSE OShea has been performing. It's way above its 200-day moving average. The long-term 10 is still bullish. Okay, so you have to start looking at other factors now. Why you want to take your money offshore. Remember, if you want to invest offshore, you have to have a high appetite for risk. Okay, there are a lot of other factors you can take in consideration, obviously currency risk, political risk, etc. But you also need time to be watching the markets. You need expert knowledge of the markets, what shares you're buying into, what the market itself, the economy. But also you understand that developed economies have much lower interest rates than South Africa, so their growth relative to interest rates is much lower. So those are the kind of things you must take into consideration too. So your investment as such might grow slower than you expect here in South Africa. So investing offshore also requires a significant chunk of your funds. Our minimum investment requirement is £5,000, or roughly about 95,000 Rand. Okay, I round off to 100,000 Rand. That's our minimum investment requirement to take your money offshore. Because less than that, you convert it back into dollars, about $6,000. Less than that, it's going to eat into your fees and things like that. It's not going to be viable as such. But so it can be daunting taking your money offshore, but I'm not being negative or anything. I'm just trying to make you aware of those kind of factors. So let's talk about the reasons, and that's going back to the theme of today's presentation. Take money offshore for the right reasons. Okay. So South Africa represents less than 1% of the world's economy. And obviously restricting yourself just to local investments means that you lose the opportunity of investing in some of the world's biggest and most successful businesses, as well as obviously the markets and such. That's number one. So the main reasons why you want to take your money offshore is to not to have all your eggs in one basket. You want to spread your risk. So it's geographical diversification of your investment portfolio. That's one of the main reasons for taking your money offshore. And that's number one. Number two, as I mentioned just now, you want to buy into companies or opportunities not available here in South Africa, be it Disney or Facebook or Apple or BP Oil, whatever the case might be. Okay. And then thirdly, obviously the performance will depend on a lot of factors, the global economic conditions and exchange rates and things like that. But I'll go into more detail with those just now. But those are the three main reasons why you want to take your money offshore. Okay. So this is a snapshot from our daily investment update this morning. So this is based on yesterday's data. But the gold mining sector, as I mentioned just now, for the last year, we're up 107%. So the mining sector has, or the resource sector has been a very, very popular sector to be involved in at the moment. So as I say, the basic minerals or the resource sector up 34% for the year. On the other side of the coin, our financial sector is negative 1.37% for the year so far. So if you look at the S&P 500 now, this is in dollar terms now. The US S&P 500, the top 500 companies in America, is up 19.88%. The NASDAQ is up 25.78%. Doesn't sound a lot, but multiply that by 15 with the exchange rate, then you see, then you can compare. Okay, so how can you gain exposure offshore? There's two ways basically to go offshore, but before we get into that, what do we offer as PSG? We offer two ways to go. I mean, 35 exchanges. Okay, what we call direct market access. You'll see just now I'll have a screenshot of a watch list. You'll have direct access to those shares, and obviously you'll have the currencies applicable to those exchanges. So if you want to invest in the London Stock Exchange, you want to have some pounds in your portfolio. US markets, obviously dollars, Singapore dollars, Aussie dollars, etc. It depends which market you're investing in. That's number one. But also, the whole idea about why you want to have offshore portfolios, you want to have a portfolio of these shares that are not available here in South Africa, but also things like the ETFs and ETNs. Okay. By the way, we do not have, through our offshore trading platform, we do not have exposure or investments into index tracking funds. We don't have unit trust on our offshore funds. So it's more direct share investment. So when we start looking at all these markets, you must understand 35 exchanges, there's over 38,000 shares worldwide. If you look at just the JSE, we are on about 450 shares. Okay, so it's impossible to follow the whole market. So our universe, our actual platform is about 1,400 shares that you'll be able to buy on our platform. What I suggest you do, go to a website like this, Market Insider, And here actually you'll get the index constituents. If you want to look at the NASDAQ 100, what are those shares that make up the NASDAQ 100? The Microsofts and the Apples and the Dell computers. You want to get the share codes. That's number one. What happens on the FTSE 100? What are those stocks? The Aussie market, etc. Get the constituents, and this is how you start making a watch list of the stocks that you might be interested in. And then you want to do further analysis, further homework or research. I use websites like investing.com. Go look at the actual company, find out how big they are. But also the best, like I said in the last webinar, go to the company's website, go to Coca-Cola's website, go to the investor section and go look at their financials. That's your best source of information. Also, you want to get more information about what's happening in the markets. I like to use Bloomberg's. You can go one step further and look at Reuters also. But the idea is to create a watch list of the stocks you're interested in, narrow down the choice, maybe down to about 25 stocks, and out of those 25 stocks, you get to buy some shares for your portfolio. Okay, so that's the process. So how do you get started? As I mentioned just now, there's two options. Basically, you can invest moving your money overseas and convert it into a foreign currency, okay, or invest it through our institutional, what we call an asset swap facility. Those are the two ways to go offshore. So first of all, you must think of, I'm going to be using a rand-denominated investment option, or I'm going to physically take my money offshore. Those are the two things, your first decision you need to make. Okay, so with an asset swap facility, you're not physically taking your money offshore. You're using PSG Wealth's asset swap facility. We can take up to 30% of our facility offshore. Okay, the main thing about an asset swap facility, it's mainly for South African individuals, but also those of you that have family trusts or companies, you can only use the asset swap facility. Okay. So there's no limitations. You can take more than as much as you want to offshore. However, we do have a minimum investment requirement of 100,000 Rand. We do not need, it's quite easy to use the asset swap facility because there's no Reserve Bank admin requirements to be done. You still have exposure to the global stock market, all the ETFs as well as the ETNs. The main thing here is if you do sell, the money has to come back to South Africa in rands. So that is what we call the asset swap facility. It's mainly, as I said, for companies. A lot of you guys are opening up companies to invest offshore. That's the vehicle you'll be using. Most of you will be using what we call the offshore allowance. Now, you can take R1 million offshore every year, okay, per calendar year, without having to get a tax clearance. Okay. Again, our minimum requirement is roughly about 100,000. That's 5,000 pounds. But the main thing is, yeah, I want to take my money offshore, convert it into a foreign currency, be it pounds, dollars, Aussie dollars, you name it. That's what you want to be using. So your first million, you can take offshore. You want to take more than $1 million offshore, up to 10 million. Now we need SARS tax clearance. It's a special certificate. It's got a SARS logo in it. It's got a specified watermark in it, but it's also only valid for 12 months from the date indicated on the certificate. Okay. So it depends on your circumstances. What is your best vehicle to take offshore? Okay. Now your call it 3 options. Okay. Asset swap, no limitations. Okay. If you sell, bring the money back in rands. Offshore allowance, I've got 2 options there. Million offshore every year. That's option number 1. Option number 2, number 3 would be I could take up to 10 million. And by the way, it's again another 10-year, another calendar year. Every year I can take off 10 million offshore. Okay, so those are your 2 options. So when it comes to offshore, understand that there's the brokerage, the costs involved. I suggest go click on our offshore funds. Go click on go into our offshore page. Go click on the offshore fees. Okay, there's a brokerage fee of 1%, minimum of 25 pounds converted to the market currency. And there's also clearing and custody fees, like our straight fee, 13 pounds per trade. The reason why it's in pounds because our offshore trading partner is SocGen. They're based in London. Okay, so but go onto our website, go look at our fees. It goes into more details. Okay, so be aware of those fees. As I say, less than 100,000. It's not very viable. because it's obviously going to cut into your fees, going to cut into it. Okay, so how can I use the offshore trading platform? I suggest your first step is, as I said, go look at the indices on that Market Insider. Go find out what the indices are. Maybe copy it into Excel spreadsheet, and then from there hone it down. But bottom line, on our PSG Wealth trading platform, this is looking at Viewpoint. You can create a watch list of the stocks that you're interested in. What's nice about this, as I said, you have DMA, direct market access, so you can see that some of these markets, some of these stocks, nice in this portfolio, for example, I've got Italian stocks. There's some stocks here from Switzerland. There are stocks in here from Portugal. But these are where they're trading at the moment. Those are where the markets are open. So yes, it's a guideline. You've got a 15-minute delay price. What I always suggest you do is don't just go blindly on this price here. Go to your website called investing.com. Gives you a figure also. You can see roughly what is the price trading at that point in time. Okay. By the way, as I say, you got Coca-Cola in this portfolio. Some of you might not know what that share code is there. RACE, R-A-C-E. Those of you interested in buying some Italian stocks, that's Ferrari. Okay. Okay, so that's how you would create a watch list. What's nice about it is also about the PSG Wealth trading platform. This is, as I say, Viewpoint. I can create a whole lot of different things. As soon as I change one of these stocks here, everything gets linked. And this is my trading platform. I can go buy Coca-Cola. As I say, it's a snapshot. The market's not open right now, but that was the last traded price. So it gives me a rough idea. And I can trade right from here. Okay, and then also what's nice is Viewpoint charts. I can go look at Coca-Cola's price. This is going right back to 2000 and the beginning of the year. I can chop and change it. I can go all the way back 5 years or whatever the case might be. And I've got over 40 indicators to help me make a more informed decision based on my timing. I can look at things like all my trend lines. There's more than 16 different trend lines. Here's a Fibonacci retracement. You see the market pulls back into this area just above its 200-day moving average. And then since then, Coca-Cola has rebounded up a bit. Okay. If you draw a little trend line out here, you can see it's about to break into new territory. Okay. So this is how you'd use and make more informed decisions for offshore. But a lot of people phone me and they have an interest in the big hot thing at the moment. I always say it's hot stocks. The current trend is marijuana ETFs. I saw recently there was this cannabis expo here in South Africa. They have recently been knocked down big time. I saw this yesterday or a few days ago. Last week, 21st of November, that these marijuana stocks have bounced back. It's a lot to do with legislation happening in America. They've passed a legislation now that will end the federal embargo on the weed, excuse the pun. Okay, but there's a lot of ETFs and a lot of interest from South African investors into the ETFs. They're buying into a basket of all these funds. Okay, but talking about ETFs, and if you've never traded offshore stocks before, as a starting point, a lot of investors like to look at the ETFs. This is iShares, for example. iShares, I believe, has the broadest, widest exposure to all different sectors and things like that. So this is just showing you the top few. Okay, if you're going to buy into the iShares emerging markets ETFs or the FTSE, through one share, you're buying into a basket of stocks. Okay, that's a FTSE. And as I say, it's the broadest. There's 2,178 ETFs just on iShares. Okay, so whatever you're looking for, you want exposure to the IT sector in the UK, you can have just that. Okay, so as a starting point, those of you that are just starting out, maybe it's a starting point also. I've also had a lot of interest in people looking at Vanguard ETFs. There's 125 of them. Okay, and that's mainly obviously the US markets. Okay, so guys, hopefully that will give you some insight into the offshore markets and how to get started. But it's very, very exciting to be in there. As I say, the main reasons why you want to be involved in there is where you can build up an offshore portfolio like this, and you have growth and your portfolio is growing. And what's nice about it is I can switch switch this portfolio, look at it in rand terms, look at it in dollar terms, look at it in euro terms, and also have, at the bottom here, we'll have my cash values, be it in pounds and euros and things like that. So it's always hands-on, and this is how you become an offshore investor. Okay, so summary and conclusion quickly. Investing offshore is for the long term. Okay, I want to stress that is a long-term thing. Do not play the market just for rand weakness. As I say, if the rand gets weaker and you take your money offshore, be the wrong time. And if the rand gets stronger, obviously, and the market collapses, you could lose half your portfolio. Okay, so you don't have to. Those of you that don't have the 100,000 rand, you can still get offshore exposure. You can have a local share portfolio and have rand hedge stocks in that portfolio. So the rand gets weaker, your portfolio would benefit from it. That's one way. You can also look at open up a unit trust portfolio and have global unit trusts. Okay, I saw there's Old Mutual as well as Sanlam have an equity portfolio that 95% of the portfolio is offshore. So again, local, no money going offshore. So you have to get tax clearance and things like that, but still taking advantage of offshore. As I mentioned lots of times in this presentation, ETFs is one of the better ways of having offshore. But if you're a bit more braver and you understand what you're doing, build a share portfolio of offshore stocks, be it the Microsofts or the BPs or the Facebooks, etc. Okay, one of my favorite stocks is Apple. Okay, but you also got things like Starbucks and McDonald's and MasterCard, you name it. Okay, but the main reasons I mentioned again for going offshore is geographical diversification, and as I just mentioned now, opportunities. Investing into companies not available here in South Africa. So you invest offshore mainly for a lot of reasons. Might be financial circumstances. Your children are going to study offshore, be it in America or be it in the UK. You want to have some funds offshore already. That's what it's for. Okay, but saying that, your goals would be directly dependent on having an investment strategy that takes all those factors into consideration. So guys, before we look at the questions you guys might have, those of you considering opening up a offshore trading account, you can click on here. It will obviously take you to your registration page, go through that whole process of registering online. So this presentation, as I said, will be recorded, or it is recorded and will be sent out hopefully latest by tomorrow morning, as well as the PDF of this presentation. So from my side, happy trading and good luck. Let me see what kind of questions you guys have got. Cool. Wow, some questions there. Anthony, yes, I'll be sending this presentation offline to you guys a bit later. Okay. What questions? Okay, here's a question here from Chris. Can I buy global index funds? No, Chris, as I mentioned just now, it'll be only the shares as well as the ETFs and the ETNs. Okay, ETNs, by the way, are quite interesting also. You can have exposure to currencies and bonds and things like that. So it's a nice way to build a diversified portfolio is through those ETFs. Okay, here's a question from Tabo. How do you register for offshore? Best thing to do is just go onto our website, go click on register and go through the whole process. I think if you haven't got an account with us yet, it's going to ask you for your ID number, and then you choose your username and password. On step 3, you look for offshore account. I suggest maybe if you're looking at having a local share portfolio, there's a one-stop where you can select the local and offshore together. Okay. So you can have those two portfolios, and that's why to diversify your portfolio. Jan asking the question here, what about the FICA requirements? I think the FICA, it's the 4 main documents: the proof of ID, proof of address. I think it's also proof of bank and proof of tax. But I think what's very important to understand with the offshore, they need certified copies of your ID and certified copies of your proof of address. Those are 2 very important things. The other thing is also important with offshore. There's a mandate you need to sign. You need to download and actually sign it and send it back to us. Very important. And also very important with the offshore trading account, and the offshore team will help you with that, is what they call FATCA. You need to fill out those FATCA forms, with basically a tax form. FATCA stands for Foreign, if I remember rightly, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. So it's a US thing. But all of our non-individuals as well as individuals have to adhere to that to have an offshore trading account. What other questions are here? Ja, Hestie, ek sê Engelse van 'n berg, maar ek sal probeer. Wat is 'n veilige 50% verdeling tussen bates en belegging? Bates, I presume, is assets and investments in South Africa. Yeah, 50-50, I'd say it would be quite safe and quite prudent. Hestie, I hope that answers your question. And here's the last question here from Sabelo. Sabelo wants to know how much is Viewpoint. Yeah, on the ball there, Sabelo. Viewpoint is 200 Rand a month, plus that's obviously 200 Rand plus VAT is 230. How can I subscribe? If you've got an existing account with us, once you've logged in your username and password, there's a button called Viewpoint. You click on that. You have to give us a day, so you'll have access to Viewpoint the day afterwards. Those of you that are interested in Viewpoint, to have an account of us already, we do have a promotion at the moment where you guys can test that out. But very important, and I'm stressing this because it's been recorded, if you're interested in the Viewpoint, you want to have a free trial, email me or go register, and then email me and say, Sean, I want to take advantage of the free trial. So we'll give you, during the December holiday, you'll have free access to the Viewpoint for free. But in January, end of January, we'll then debit your account. But very important, if you want a free trial for a month or so, email me that you want to subscribe to it, or you have subscribed to it. I need to know your username, as well as obviously your email address and contact details. But guys, from our side, looks like that's all the questions. I hope you've enjoyed it. So just quickly wrapping this up. If any questions you guys have, there's the email address for the team, Wealth at PSG, as well as our contact phone number. From our side, thank you very much for being on this webinar. Thanks for your support for the year. And we'll have our next webinar in January. But here's my disclaimer. Obviously, it's all for educational purposes. There was no tips. I'm not highlighting for you that you must rush out and go buy Coca-Cola stocks. It was just for education. But from my side, guys, thank you very much. All the best. Have an awesome Christmas period. Drive safely if you're on the roads. And we'll see you in the new year. All the best. Bye for now.